My wife's affair was no secret to our kids, and they helped her hide it. Last week, I stumbled upon something that shattered my world into pieces. It all began when my wife, Linda, was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced over, thinking it was a message from one of our daughters, Maddie, who's 24, or Alice, who's 26. They had plans for a girls' dinner that night, and I figured it might be a confirmation about the time or place. But instead, I saw a notification that made my stomach drop. The message came from an unsaved number and read, "I can't wait to see you tonight," followed by a kissing emoji. I froze, the words blurring in front of me. My heart raced as I hesitated, debating whether I should open it or let it go. Against my better judgment, I clicked on the thread. What I found made my chest tighten. The conversation was short but damning: plans for dinner, giddy remarks about missing each other, and one line that hit me like a brick: "Once a week just isn't enough time with you." I've been married to Linda for nearly 30 years. We built a life together, raised 2 wonderful daughters, or so I thought. In that moment, the foundation of my world felt like it had been knocked out from under me. Trying to catch her in a lie before she left the house, I quickly texted both Maddie and Alice. "Hey, what time is your girls' dinner tonight? Just curious." I was still clinging to the hope that maybe I was wrong, that this was all a misunderstanding. What happened next crushed me in a way I didn't think was possible. Both of them replied almost instantly, cheerful and nonchalant. "Dinner's at 7. Can't wait." I couldn't believe it. My own daughters were covering for their mother's affair. I'm not proud of what I did after that. Desperation and heartbreak took over. I picked up Linda's phone, turned on location sharing, and linked it to my phone. I let her leave the house, pretending nothing was wrong. Then I followed her. She drove to a cozy little restaurant on the other side of town, the kind of place you'd pick for an intimate date, not a casual dinner with your daughters. I parked a few spots away and waited, half hoping that Maddie and Alice would walk through the door, that this nightmare wasn't real. But no. The man who arrived was someone I recognized all too well, her boss. I stayed in my car, watching as they greeted each other. They held hands, leaned in close, and shared a kiss right there in public. My chest felt like it might explode. A part of me wanted to storm inside, to confront them right then and there. But instead, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. The rage simmering inside me boiled over when I sent those photos to our family group chat with a single, cutting message: "Glad you're enjoying your girls' dinner." Then I turned off my phone and drove straight to my brother Jeff's house. I barely made it through his door before I broke down completely. The next morning, my phone was flooded with over 40 text messages and at least 20 voicemails. Linda had cycled through every excuse in the cheater's playbook: "It's not what it looks like, it was a mistake, I still love you," but I didn't even bother listening to her voice messages. I knew there was no coming back from this. I was ready to text her, "I'm filing for divorce. I suggest you get a lawyer." But Jeff stopped me. "Take your time," he said. "Meet with lawyers first. Make sure she can't use the good ones in town." So I took his advice. I spent the day calling and meeting with several of the best divorce attorneys around, making sure to lock them in as consultations so Linda couldn't use them. By the end of the day, I had chosen one who promised to go scorched earth if necessary. Later that night, I finally looked at the messages from Maddie and Alice. Both of them were apologizing, but in very different ways. Maddie, my youngest and the one who'd always been a daddy's girl, was frantic. She had sent nearly 50 texts, some of them practically incoherent. Her boyfriend even reached out to me, pleading on her behalf. "Please, just talk to her. She's a wreck and says she made a huge mistake." I sent her a short but firm reply: "Maddie, I love you, but what you've done has hurt me more than I can say. I need space. Please respect that." Her response came almost immediately: "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll never forgive myself. I love you so much." Alice's apology, however, was different. She was always closer to Linda, more of a mama's girl. Her message was short and defensive: "I'm sorry, Dad, but don't you think it's a bit extreme to throw away a good marriage over one mistake?" That lit a fire inside me. I replied with a single, cold message, Alice, this wasn't a mistake, it was a betrayal, from all of you. Don't contact me until I decide I'm ready to speak. She didn't reply, but I know she must have shown the message to Linda. A few hours later, Linda was blowing up my phone again, saying I shouldn't take this out on Alice. I ignored her. From now on, I'll only speak to her through lawyers. It's been 5 days since this all began, and I'm still staying at Jeff's place. Every morning, I wake up with tears streaming down my face. The pain feels endless, swinging between overwhelming sadness and burning anger. Losing Linda is hard enough, but the thought of my daughters being complicit in her betrayal is something I can't seem to wrap my head around. Alice is supposed to get married in the fall, and I've been paying for most of it. Now, I don't even know if I'll attend. How do I forgive them for this? How do I ever look at them the same way again? Right now, I don't have any answers. All I know is that I'm completely destroyed. It's hard to believe that a whole year has passed since my life turned upside down. Some days it feels as though it just happened, like the wounds are still fresh. Other times, it feels like this has been my reality forever, as though the life I had before never really existed. The divorce between me and my soon-to-be ex-wife, Diane, is still dragging on. We were required to go through a 6-month legal separation before officially starting the divorce process, which added another layer of frustration to an already painful situation. After spending about 10 days at my brother Chris's house, I moved back into what was technically still my home. A week later, I served Diane with the legal separation papers to re-establish that the house was still my primary residence. The terms of the separation were a nightmare. We had just 1 year left on the mortgage, and the arrangement dictated that whoever stayed in the house would have to cover the entire mortgage for that year. But, of course, Diane used her past as a stay-at-home mom to her advantage. Even though she hadn't been one for over 20 years, her choice, not mine, she argued that she couldn't afford the full payments. The court sided with her, and the result was that she stayed in the house while we split the mortgage. That's how I ended up here, in a 1-bedroom apartment, typing this out. It's small, but it's quiet, and for now, it's home. Maddie, my younger daughter, and I reconciled fairly quickly, though not without difficulty. One evening, not long after the separation papers were served, she showed up at the house and refused to leave until I talked to her. She didn't yell or make a scene, she just planted herself there, quiet but determined. This went on for weeks. Her boyfriend, Eric, was clearly annoyed. He'd show up to pick her up, only to stand around awkwardly while she made it clear she wasn't leaving. I overheard her one evening saying, right in front of Diane, "I'm not going back to the apartment until Dad and I talk." At the time, it was exasperating. I didn't want to be in that house at all, let alone deal with these emotional standoffs while Diane and I were constantly butting heads over the separation terms. But eventually, my bottled-up frustration came spilling out. I unloaded all my anger and hurt onto Maddie, and that's when she broke down and told me the truth about how she had found out. Apparently, 2 weeks before I discovered Diane's affair, there had been an actual girls' dinner. Diane, after a few too many glasses of wine, let it slip in front of Maddie and Alice. Alice tried to stop her, but it was too late. Diane and Alice begged Maddie to keep quiet, promising that Diane would tell me the truth soon. Through tears, Maddie admitted that she now realized her mother had no intention of confessing. The lie about the girls' dinner was the first time Maddie had lied to me about the affair. According to her, Diane told her that she was planning to break things off with her boss that night and come clean. As Maddie and I sat there crying together, Diane walked in and tried to defend herself. That's when I completely lost it. I yelled at her like I've never yelled at anyone in my life, letting out all the anger and betrayal that had been festering inside me. Maddie had to step in and calm me down. I was furious, not just at Diane but at how she had manipulated and used one of our daughters to cover for her infidelity. It was unforgivable. That night, I decided I couldn't stay in that house any longer. To get out, I reluctantly agreed to the split mortgage arrangement. Maddie moved back in with Eric, and I found my current apartment. Once I was settled, Maddie even came over and decorated the place for me, adding little touches to make it feel more like home. Alice, however, is a different story. We're not on speaking terms. After the fallout, her fiancé, Ryan, called me, confused and concerned. He had noticed something was off and suspected that Alice might be cheating on him. I told him the truth, that I didn't have any evidence of Alice cheating but that Diane had been unfaithful and Alice had known about it before I did. I have no idea what happened after that conversation, but it ended with Ryan breaking off their engagement. Alice was livid. She called me in tears, blaming me for the breakup and accusing me of ruining her life. I tried to explain that I had simply told the truth, but she wouldn't hear it. She blocked me shortly afterward, and we haven't spoken since. To make matters worse, I found out that Alice kept some of the wedding deposit money I'd paid for herself. I still don't know how much she knew about Diane's affair or for how long, but her lack of remorse tells me we may never have a relationship again. Now, Alice and Diane are living together in the house. Diane is openly dating her boss, who transferred to another firm after I caught them. Part of me feels a pathetic twinge of jealousy, not because I want Diane back, but because I hate feeling so alone. Maddie, bless her heart, has been trying to nudge me back into the dating world. She helped me set up an online profile and even teased me when my first match turned out to be a 33-year-old single mom. "Dad," she said, laughing, "you're such a weirdo." Despite my hesitation, she encouraged me to go on a date with this woman, and I reluctantly agreed. It's scheduled for next week, and while I'm nervous, part of me is curious to see if starting over is even possible. Right now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. The pain hasn't gone away, it still feels raw most days. But maybe, just maybe, there's a glimmer of hope on the horizon.